first time, if you hit it and it stops moving and stuff like that, ihsan to it is that it's mustahab, that the second and the third and the fourth, how many, how much ever you need to hit it after that to kill it, that you progressively get lighter. So the first time you hit it, if you hit it hard, especially if some people get flustered by them and you react, once you hit them, they stop moving, they're no longer a threat to you. The second time you don't hit it, all your power is squished. You until slightly, and each time is lighter than the first time. This is mustahab according to the fuqaha because of ihsan. Inna Allah kataba al-ihsana ila kulli shay. Have ihsan to everything. So to yourself, to other human beings, to animals, to plants, to care plants, to water them. If you put them in a pot, then water them. If they cannot themselves suck up the water, then you give water to them. Even if they're not in pots, but they cannot. You don't cut them if they're fruiting for absolutely no reason. If there's a reason, then you need to. If there's no reason, then it's better not to do that to them. To remove from them what is harmful to them. Like those fruit trees that get taken over by bird vines. I know you guys call it bird. In Guyana, we call it bird vines. Like the birds, they come and they pass out some seeds onto the trees, and then those seeds go and then takes over them. To remove that is ihsan. If somebody sees this and let it go, and nobody is taking care of that, that's not ihsan to the tree. So, inna Allah katab al-ihsan ila kulli shay. If somebody says, am I required as a Muslim to remove the bird vine? This is your... If they say, what's your dalil? Allah, the Prophet ﷺ said, inna Allah katab al-ihsan ila kulli shay. So you got to ask yourself, is it shay? Is it a thing? Yeah, inna Allah katab al-ihsan ila kulli shay. So to remove that from them. If they're affected by bugs, if they're trees that are affected by bugs, it is the duty of Muslims, because of this hadith, to remove that from them, but in a way that is not harmful to them. So all of the things about insecticides and all that, this is actually harmful to them and harmful to the ground around them, then this is something that we should avoid. This also comes to the point of farmers. If they say, we know that if the research is actually conclusive, that the use of some pesticides, some of the chemical insecticides that we have, it is harmful to the tree. The farmer, if he asks, am I obligated as a Muslim? Or at least it is recommended for me to stop? Yeah, why? Allah says, Inna Allah katab al-ihsana ila kulli shay. Now they're saying there's new research that says that the trees cry and complain when harm is done to them. The scientists are saying we can now tap into that frequency and actually hear the complaints of trees. You can hear them crying out. So, Inna Allah katab al-ihsana ila kulli shay. Humans, animals, plants. Also the ground, the earth, the water. I mean, we all know what's happening now with the earth and the water and the seas and what's the harm that we're doing to it. Inna Allah katab al-ihsana ila kulli shay. Allah Azza wa Jal requires you to have ihsan, to have kindness towards everything. Kull shay. The hadith says kull shay, everything. The only exception in the hadith is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah, there's an ikhtilaf among the scholars of kalam, whether we can describe Allah as being shay'un, as being a thing. And according to the majority of the scholars of kalam, it's permissible to refer to Allah as a thing. So if we take that position that we can refer to Allah Azza wa Jal as a thing, shay'un, that He's the only exception in this hadith. Because there's no way that we can have ihsan towards Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah transcends being kind to. Nobody can be kind towards Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah is Allah and He's not susceptible to kindness or the opposite of kindness. So it includes everything. So the earth, the plants, it also includes the angels, it includes jinns. Ihsan to the angels is when the angels are everywhere. And they are harmed by certain things. They are harmed by bad smells. So don't keep bad smells on your body or your house, because you're not being muhsin to the angels. Cover your awrah when there is no need for the awrah to be exposed because of the angels. Don't commit sins because the angels that are stuck with you, that have to record them, have to see them. So ihsan to everything. When we give salam in salah, to end the prayer, salam to the left, salam to the right, is mustahab to intend with that salam that we're giving salam to the believing Muslims, humans, jinns and angels to the right, and the humans, jinns and angels to the left. This is ihsan to them. So to the angels and to the jinns, ihsan to the jinns, if we can see them, is to treat them well. And to treat them well doesn't mean only any goodness. Well may also include harshness. The way parents sometimes need a bit of harshness for the well-being of their children. So ihsan, if you have to correct somebody in a harsh way, it's still ihsan. Because you're doing it, why? For the well-being of that individual. So jinns, if you see them doing wickedness, to correct them is wajib, like human beings. So to be good to the jinns, and to be good to the angels. So ihsan, inna Allah kataba al-ihsana ila kulli shay. There are some people who are involved with that realm of exorcism and whatnot. They capture, I don't know the truth of any of these kind of things, but it's very common that they say they capture them and put them in bottles and all of these things. This is not ihsan. What justifies that? If it's the only means to prevent them from committing harm, then maybe. But beyond that, to just make a habit out of harming jinns just simply because you won't be taken to a court of sharia or something like that for it, is not permissible. Inna Allah kataba al-ihsana ila kulli shay. To your property, to your wealth. Ihsan to things that you own is to take care of the things that you have. The things that Allah Azza wa Jal gave to you. To leave your things about in a way that it can be stolen or damaged is not permissible. When I say it's not permissible and it's makruh, it's permissible as in it's not haram. Once you have ownership, you have tasarruf. And you can do whatever you want with your property. But it's still, this is why in Sharia, if something is stolen, something valuable is stolen from a place that is not appropriate for storing it, the person who stole it would not receive the hadd punishment according to Sharia. Because the negligence is on your part. If you leave jewelry outside, out and about, somebody stole it, no matter how expensive it is, there will be no hadd. The hadd meaning the stipulated punishment of cutting the hands will not be applied. Because it wasn't stolen from a place that was meant to keep it safe. So that's one of the conditions for the application of the hadd, is that it has to be stolen from the place in which it is usually properly kept. Because then you can blame the thief. And he actually went into something, broke it, he thought about it. He actually penetrated your protection to take it. But if he took it from a place that you were negligent to leave it, and he's not punished with the hadd, he's punished in a different way. The qadi can stipulate a punishment, but he's not punished with the stipulated punishment for theft. So to have ihsan to your property is to store it in the places that is proper for them, and also not to open them to damage. One of the things about wiping, for example, in fiqh, in Shafi'i fiqh, they say, for example, to wipe over hoofs. It's permissible to wipe over hoofs with all the conditions. One of the conditions is that it would not be damaged by water. If you wipe on it, it will be damaged. Then it's actually better to take it off and wash the feet. Why? Because if you know this will cause damage to it, and the Sharia asks you not to damage property, then the priority in such a case, from the Shari perspective, is to preserve wealth, to preserve property. وَكَرَّهَا إِلَيْكُمْ ثَلَاث. In the Hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah Azza wa Jalla commands you to do 3 things, and He hates for you to do 3 things. And one of the 3 things is إِضَاعَةِ الْمَالِ, to waste the money. Waste the money means to waste property, to waste wealth. And your khuf is your wealth. And so if you know know that water will damage it, the Sharia would not ask you to wipe over it, because the Sharia wouldn't ask you to damage your own wealth. So, إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَتَبَ الْإِحْسَانَ إِلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. If we interpret ihsan here to mean be good to, to be kind towards, then that is the meaning of the hadith. So ala would mean ila, and it means everything. You have ihsan towards everything. If we say that ihsan in the hadith means to do things properly, إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَتَبَ الْإِحْسَانَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. Allah Azza wa Jalla requests of the Muslims that whatever they do it properly. Then the meaning of ala in this context would be fi. إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَتَبَ الْإِحْسَانَ فِي كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. In everything that you do it properly. Now, when we say do it properly, how do we determine what is proper? Because ihsan, with the meaning of do things proper, means do that which is hasan. Ahsana al-fi'la, and he did something proper means he did it in a way that was hasan, in a way that was good. How do we determine what is good? By Sharia. This is one of the key principles of the Aqeedah of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, is that what is good is determined by Sharia. It's one of the major breaks between Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah and the Mu'tazila. The Mu'tazila believe that good and bad can be determined by reason, by the aql, in every case. And that revelation must follow the aql. And whatever the intellect determines as good, revelation has to confirm that. While Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we say no, good and bad are shar'iyyan. These are things that are determined by the Sharia. The Sharia determines what is hasan, and the Sharia determines what is qabih, what is good, what is bad. So we say there are three categories. The word hasan and the word good and the word bad is used in three contexts. One is that which the human beings are naturally inclined to, is described as being good. You need to be healthy and not to be sick. No matter where you go in the world, no matter the culture of the people, no matter the time, no matter the place, if people are normal natures, they will say to be healthy is better than being sick. So health is good, sickness is bad. Why? Naturally human beings are inclined to health, not the opposite. They are disinclined to sickness. So that's one category. That which the natural constitution of man is inclined to, and that from which it is disinclined. Then the other category is that which is recognized as a good quality in a thing, as opposed to the opposite of that quality. So for example, knowledge in a human being. Without revelation, just asking people, any part of the world, is knowing better than not knowing? They'll say yes. Knowing is good, not knowing is bad. Even if you go to tribes that never had what we're accustomed to, and you ask them, is it good that somebody knows how to hunt? They'll say yes. They don't need revelation to tell them that. Is it bad not to know how to hunt in your environment? It's bad. In other words, one makes somebody more complete, the lack of it makes that person incomplete. So that's also one category of using the word good and bad. These two categories can be determined by pure reason. What is good, what is bad in these two categories can be known by reason. Just the intellect can make that judgment. And the only time we go against that is if there's revelation that counters it. If in those two categories, if the intellect determines something to be good, but revelation came and said it's not good, then primacy goes to revelation. Or if the intellect believes that it's bad, and revelation came and said it's good, or the opposite, the intellect says it's good, but revelation came and said it's bad, then the revelation takes precedence. But in the absence of revelation, the absence of wahi, the mere intellect can come up with the judgments in those two categories of what is good and what is bad. But there's a third category in which the word or the judgments good and bad are used, and that is what determines that something is praiseworthy in the dunya or blameworthy. An act that could be criticized or should be criticized or should be praised. And if it's praised in the dunya or praiseworthy in the dunya, then it's rewardable in the akhirah. If it is blameworthy in the dunya, then it is punishable in the akhirah. In this category, here's where the ikhtilaf occurs. Here's where the difference of opinion occurs among Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah and the Mu'tazila. Where in this third category, Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah say that Hasan, what is good, can only be determined by Sharia, and there is no place for normative operations of the world, and there's no place for the intellect informing the judgments of good and bad in this category. It's completely up to revelation. What is good is up to revelation, what is bad is up to revelation. While the Mu'tazila say no, the intellect can determine in this category what is good and what is bad, and revelation must confirm or must follow the intellect. And this principle is one of the foundational principles of Aqidah. According to Imam al-Sanusi rahimahullah ta'ala, we can trace all kufr and bid'ah. We can trace it back to 7 fundamental principles. And this is one of those 7. Tahseen al-aql. To believe that what is good can be determined by the intellect in the category that we mentioned. So when we say, if the meaning of the word ihsan in the hadith is to do that which is good, that which is good is only determined by Sharia, not anything else. So إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَتَبَ الْإِحْسَانَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ means Allah Azza wa Jal requests of you that you do everything according to the Sharia to the best of your capabilities. Ihsan. And in this meaning, there is a level of ihsan that is wajib for everybody. So for example, to perform salah, fulfilling all of the arkan and shurut, facing the qibla, covering the awrah, removing najasa from the body and the clothing, removing hadath from the body, and then fulfilling the arkan. And that differs from madhab to madhab. That is ihsan, that is wajib. Anything lower than that is described as bad. So the word ihsan or the word hasan cannot be applied to anything lower than that. If somebody does that, even to the minimum that is required, so they cover the awrah to the minimum that is required, face the qibla, do the arkan of the prayer. So if they fulfill the shurut of the arkan, but to the minimum that is required, can we describe what they did as good? Yes. We can say to that person, ahsanta, you have done well. That's the minimum. That's the wajib of ihsan. Lower than that is what is described as being bad. But if the person just did that, we can't say, oh, you did bad. Relative to what is higher, you've not done enough. If you just cover the awrah and pray, relative to the ones who wear all of the required, the mustahab clothing, and dressed in white and cover different, wear a turban and all of that, compared to those who haven't done as good. But can you say what you've done is bad? Only the Sharia can determine what is bad. So we have the Sharia describe it as being bad, as being qabih. No. The Sharia didn't, so we can't. You get where it's important to know that we can only describe something as bad if the Sharia describes it as bad. So we can't go with our own principles and our own sense of religiosity and tell a person you've done bad. So no, you could do better. There's work to be done. you can do better, but you haven't done bad. If an alim does that, we can say you've done bad. Because for an alim, it's makruh to just pray, especially in public, doing the minimum. Because the slips of an alim is the slip of the alam, they say. There's the world. People are going to follow you in that. They're going to normalize it. They're going to say, well, if the shaykh does it, then I can do it. So then you're corrupting the people. But if the regular people do it, regular meaning non-ulama, then it's not described as being bad. So إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَتَبَ الْإِحْسَانَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. The wajib, level of ihsan is to complete the wajib of everything that you do according to sharia. And then beyond that, ihsan beyond that is to do the maximum that is mustahab for everything. So the minimum of brushing the teeth is you just need something rough, according to the Shafi'i school, that's separate from the body to just go over the teeth. That's the minimum. Maximum is to do it in the way the Prophet ﷺ did it, with the tool that he did it, with the degree of wetness that he did it, beginning from the place that he did, the side that he did, the amount of strokes that he did. If our teeth have the same dimensions as his. That's also important to remember. In all of the sunnah that talks about how much water he used in wudu and ghusl, how many times he combed it, all of that is only sunnah if you have the same size limb with the same type skin. Because sometimes the amount of water needed by somebody else is not as much or might be more. So you can't say sunnah to limit yourself to it. Anyway, so that's the point. Ihsan is to do what is hasan according to the sharia. Minimum is to do the wajib of everything. Maximum is to go to what is beyond that. So then the Prophet ﷺ gave examples. He said, فَإِذَا قَتَلْتُمْ. If you kill, فَأَحْسِنُوا الْقِتْلَةَ. Then kill with ihsan. Meaning, if you kill what is permissible to be killed. If you kill what is not permissible to be killed, doesn't matter how great you do it, it is not ihsan. Because the sharia does not describe it as being hasan. So it doesn't matter. If somebody says, like the greatest hunter in the world, if he goes and kills game, in a way that other hunters will say, the way you shot, the way you breathe, when you your calculation of the wind, everything in terms of the skill involved is like the greatest, that's not ihsan. That's just mastering something qabih. So now it becomes, from the view of the sharia, it becomes aqbah. The more you master it, the more qabih, the worse it becomes. So when you say ahsan al-qitl, that which is permissible to be killed. Because anything beyond that is not good. So if you kill, and some of the ulama say the reason he chose this is because in general, one of the methods of the Prophet ﷺ in speech is that when he's trying to emphasize a point, he would choose the biggest thing in relative to what he's speaking about. So in terms of ihsan, he wants to really drive the point, so he chose something like killing. Even killing can be done with ihsan. According to others, the reason he chose this example is because the Arabs at the time, their killing practices were not good. For example, when they kill animals, they would cut the nose off and let it bleed to death. That's how they would slaughter animals. Or the manner in which they would treat an animal when they're about to kill it, because they're about to kill it, they just think they treat it rough. So he chose that as an example to say, even when you're going to do something like this, do it with ihsan. So he said, فَإِذَا قَتَلْتُمْ. If you kill, فَأَحْسِنُوا الْقِتْلَةَ. We can say qitla or qatla. فَأَحْسِنُوا الْقِتْلَةَ or أَحْسِنُوا الْقَتْلَةَ. Some hadith says فَأَحْسِنُوا الْقَتْلَ. Some versions of the hadith says فَأَحْسِنُوا الْقَتْلَ. If we say qitla, then we mean the manner in which you kill. The form, the hay'ah, the way it seems to the outside. And kill in a way that doesn't appear bad, that appears hasan, that appears good. Proficient, proper. If we say qatl, it means the actual act of slaughtering itself. It doesn't matter how it looks. If a lot of blood spills around, it doesn't matter. Just the act of killing should be done properly. Majority of the hadith, of the versions of the hadith, came with qitla, with a kasra. فَأَحْسِنُوا الْقِتْلَةَ. The entire manner in which it is done should be done properly. And we've described some of this before. Like when you kill the animal, every time you need to hit it afterwards, it's more gentle. Stuff like that. If you don't need to like squish a bug and drag it out over the ground, then there's no need for that. Why? Because the appearance is not hasan. It's nasty, it's not good. So the best manner that you can do it, with the you get the point. To the best of your ability. Do it, limit the gruesomeness of the whole thing. Even when we say permissible to kill, in the instances when we have the death penalty in Sharia, also ahsinul qitla. You do it properly. Do it swiftly. Do it with the less pain, except if the Sharia asks otherwise. Like the stoning to death, people think there's an easier way to do that. Well, hasan is what is described by the Sharia. If the Sharia says this is the way, then that is hasan. Any other way is not hasan. And that's up to the hikmah of the Sharia. But do it in the way prescribed by the Sharia. فَأَحْسِنُوا الْقِتْلَةَ. And it's وَإِذَا ذَبَحْتُمْ. And if you slaughter, فَأَحْسِنُوا الذِّبْحَةَ. Then do the slaughtering properly. So the first one is killing. The difference between dhabiha and killing is that dhabiha is slaughtering the animal to make it halal. Killing is any other killing. For example, you can slaughter a tiger, for example. If you do it by the rules of the Sharia, it's not a halal slaughter because we can't eat that animal. So that will just be killing. That's a killing of an animal. As opposed, that's the difference between dhabh. In the Sharia, in the Arabic language, dhabh is just a form of killing. But in the Sharia, the word dhabiha, is used for the slaughterings of the Sharia. On the day of Eid, for aqiqah, and for sadaqah, stuff like that. You need to make something halal. So, إِذَا ذَبَحْتُمْ فَأَحْسِنُوا الذِّبْحَةَ. If you kill, slaughter the animals, then do it in a way that's hasan, in a way that's proper. What's proper? The wajib amount. Because we said ihsan, with this mean the wajib and what is beyond the wajib. The wajib of slaughtering is that we cut the throat, the pipe for food and the pipe for air. The esophagus, that you slug this, so you cut the throat and the esophagus. This is wajib according to Sharia. If we don't do that, the animal is not halal. And then to cut the two veins, the jugular veins, is mustahab. And then anything beyond that is mustahab. To say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasul, to say Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, all of this is mustahab. To say the shahada is mustahab. All of that is mustahab. But for it to be proper, it has to be a Muslim or Ahlul Kitab, with the conditions according to the Shafi'i school are difficult to fulfill in our times. And we cut the throat, we cut the esophagus, or the mari and the... So, this is the wajib. And that it be done with a knife sharp enough that it doesn't cause unnecessary pain. If the animal submits. If the animal is not one that submits, then there's other rules that apply to shooting them. So, then فَأَحْسِنُوا الذِّبْحَةَ. That's the wajib, we said. Beyond that, what is the mustahab of the slaughter? The mustahab is number one, that we feed the animal. We don't slaughter hungry animals. that we do not sharpen the knife in front of them. There's even a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ passed by a man about to slaughter a sheep, and he had his foot on the sheep, like holding it down, and he's sharpening the knife in front of the Prophet ﷺ. You're going to kill it twice? The Prophet ﷺ asked, you're going to kill the animal twice? Meaning this is already such a dreadful thing for the animal, and then you're going to cut it afterwards. So in other words, don't. So ihsan to them is to not sharpen the knife in front of them. Not to, if you have to kill multiple animals, not to kill them in the presence of the others. And they should not see the others being slaughtered. That when we bring them to the place of slaughter, we don't drag them there. There's another hadith where a person was about to kill a sheep, and it ran away, and the man ran behind it, and then he caught it by the leg, and he was dragging it. The Prophet saw him, and he stopped him from doing that, and told him that if you're going to kill it, then show mercy. And the man said, I'm about to kill it, should I still show it mercy? And then the Prophet said, irhamha yarhamuk Allah. Or yani idha rahimtaha yarhamuk Allah. Yani if you show it mercy, Allah will show you mercy. So when we take it to the place of slaughter, we do not drag it or force it. And then once we get it there, once we get it to the place, even if there's a struggle, if it senses that it will be killed, because sometimes they can smell. If it's a place, even if they didn't see another animal killed, they'll smell the blood and stuff like that. So even if there's a resistance, you're taking it to the place of slaughter. If there's a resistance and it's like, and you manage to get it there in the kindest, calmest way possible in the situation, it's mustahab not to kill it right away. After that fight, let it calm down. After it's calmed down and cool, you give it some water and you feed it, stuff like that. Pet it if you need to, get it to calm down, and then afterwards. All of this is mustahab for the any slaughter. Because this is min bab al-ihsan. This is to have ihsan for the animal. فَإِذَا to the animal. And this ihsan in killing the animal. So, فَإِذَا ذَبَحْتُمْ if you slaughter, فَأَحْسِنُوا الذِّبْحَةَ then do the slaughter properly, meaning with ihsan, in the best way possible, the easiest way possible. And then once you do that, there are other stipulations in the Sharia. So, just to read the hadith again, reported from Abi Ya'la Shaddad ibn Aus radiyallahu anhu عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن الله كتب الإحسان على كل شيء. Allah Azza wa Jal requests or prescribes ihsan in everything or to everything. فَإِذَا قَتَلْتُمْ فَأَحْسِنُوا الْقِتْلَةَ if you kill, then kill with ihsan. وَإِذَا ذَبَحْتُمْ فَأَحْسِنُوا الذِّبْحَةَ then if you slaughter, slaughter with ihsan. And then he says وَلْيُحِدَّ أَحَدُكُمْ شَفْرَتَهُ and sharpen, let every one of you sharpen his knife, meaning his tool. We said the wajib amount is the amount that would not cause pain. Above that is to the sharpest possible. And وَلْيُرِحْ ذَبِيحَتَهُ and then he should bring ease to the animal slaughter in the ways that we described. Feed it, calm it down, pet it, and you have a clean place for it to be slaughtered, not for it to see others being slaughtered. Don't sharpen the knife in front of it, stuff like that. The next hadith, we'll move on to the next hadith, which is hadith number 18. So, Imam al-Nawawi narrated through an unbroken chain of narration to Abi Dharr, Jundub ibn Junada, and Abi Abd al-Rahman Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiyallahu anhuma. عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, who narrated from the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم that he said, اتق الله حيثما كنت وأتبع السيئة الحسنة تمحها وخالق الناس بخلق حسن. رواه الترمذي وقال حسن وفي بعضها حسن صحيح. So Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala narrated from the authority of Abu Dharr, Jundub ibn Junada al-Ghifari radiyallahu anhu wa arda. Abu Dharr was the 4th or 5th person to accept Islam. According to him, he was the 4th. And he said, I am the 4th person to accept Islam. According to some others, he was the 5th person to accept Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ described Abu Dharr as being the most truthful of people. The most truthful of people is a statement that the Arabs had to emphasize the truthfulness of somebody. It's not to say literally he is the most truthful of the companions. It's just to say that he was remarkably truthful. But in terms of, we do not understand it literally, meaning we do not say that he was more truthful than Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, or that he was more truthful than Umar ibn al-Khattab or the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So it's not the Prophet saying, of everybody alive, this is the most truthful. No, it's a statement among the Arabs to indicate that the person is very truthful. So the Prophet ﷺ described him as being the most truthful of people. And Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu wa arda described Abu Dharr. He said Abu Dharr is the things that they had where they used to store water, the skin that they would store water in. Ali ibn Abi Talib described him as being one of that Allah Azza wa Jal placed knowledge in him, closed the cap, and knowledge did not escape him until he left the world. Meaning he was somebody filled with knowledge, and he was somebody who remembered everything that he learned. This is what Ali radiallahu anhu is saying about him, that not only was he full of knowledge, but he remembered everything. Because it's very typical, anybody who is involved in talab al-ilm, in studying, would know that forgetting is a natural part of studying. Forgetting is a natural part of studying. Every alim forgets a whole, if not most, of what they study. So, when Ali radiallahu anhu was saying that not only was this man blessed with ilm, but Allah blessed him with retaining what he learned. So, he was an incredible companion of the Prophet ﷺ. He is the first person to greet the Prophet ﷺ with the greeting Assalamu alaikum, to give salam. He was the first person to give salam to the Prophet ﷺ. When he heard about the coming of the Prophet ﷺ, he's from the tribe, the Ghifar, Banu Ghifar. So he was from that tribe, and when he heard about the coming of the Prophet ﷺ, he sent his brother Unais. He said, "Go see, about this man." So he went. His brother went and observed the Prophet ﷺ and the companions and the reaction of the people of Quraysh. And he came back and he was reporting to him. He asked him what happened. What did you see? And he said, "I saw him saying or claiming, the Prophet ﷺ claiming to be sent by God." In other words, he wasn't claiming anything for himself. He was claiming that he was sent by God. And he was ordering people to have good akhlaq. These are the two things he reported. He claimed to be sent by God, and his instructions to people were have proper behavior. He was trying to correct the behavior of people. And then Abu Dharr asked him, what was the reaction of the people of Mecca? And he said, the people of Mecca are annoyed by him. He said, what are they saying about him? So he said, they're saying he's a poet, or he's a sorcerer, or he's a magician, or he's a fortune teller. And somebody who's taking information from the stars, reading the stars, whatever that means. And he said to his brother, testify. In other words, know for a fact that he is telling the truth and they are telling lies. That report from his brother convinced him that this was a prophet. So he left his tribe and he went to find the Prophet ﷺ. And as he was coming in, he saw different people. He was asking them where he can find the Prophet ﷺ. The man pretended to say, I can show you where he was. And he was taking him, and the man got annoyed that somebody is coming from outside. Because remember, the people of Mecca are very upset with the Prophet ﷺ. So now not only is the message spreading among the people of Mecca, but now the Arab tribes from outside of Mecca are now coming to learn. So they got very upset. So a man said, I'll show you where he is. And while he was guiding him, he put Abu Dhar in front of him and he took a rock and he threw it at him. And Abu Dhar lost consciousness, woke back up. Anyway, he figured, I can't ask people anymore because of what's happening. So he decided, I'm going to go to the center of Makkah al-Mukarram and I'm going to look to see if I can find the Prophet ﷺ. So he went to the Kaaba, which would be the center of the city. And he was just waiting there. He waited for, some narration said 30 days to see if he can find the Prophet ﷺ. And then one night he saw a man came out and the person was praying, and he figured out, well, this is the Prophet ﷺ. So he went behind him and he said, Assalamu alayka ya Muhammad. This is the first greeting of salam given to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ answered the salam and he accepted Islam. And then he went back to his tribe. The Prophet ﷺ said, go back to your tribe, because maybe Allah will benefit them through you. He went and came back. He wanted to stay with the Prophet ﷺ, but he went back and eventually the entire tribe accepted Islam. The entire tribe accepted Islam. They're called Banu Ghifar. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Aslamat Ghifarun ghafara lahumullah. The Ghifar accepted Islam. May Allah grant them maghfirah. So this is Abu Dhar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. He's from the Azhar, and he is from the strictest of the companions in Zuhud. He was so strict that even Umar ibn Khattab used to try to tell him, don't. Like, he would get annoyed with the Muslims doing this and doing that, and Umar used to have to try to calm him down. Like that type of zahid, he was very strict in his practice of Islam. And he died not having anything to cover his body, or he eventually got, but he didn't have anything. He was on a journey and got sick, and his wife was there and they didn't have anything to cover him. And he was saying, she was just the two of them. And she started to cry. He said, what is causing you to cry? And she said, should I not cry that my husband is about to die in the middle of nowhere with nothing to cover him? And then he said, don't worry about that. Once I was in a gathering of people with the Prophet ﷺ, and he told them that a man from amongst you will die in a place where nobody would be, or he would be visited by death. I mean, he wouldn't die, but he would be on the verge of death in a place where there'd be nobody, but a group of Muslims will witness his state. And in other words, so he told her this while they're alone. And then he said that the Prophet ﷺ said this to a group of Muslims, and all of the people who were in that group, they already died not in an isolated place. I'm the only one left. So don't worry, a group of Muslims will find us. And she went out looking for something, and then she saw a group of people, and they came, and she told them that about Abu Dhar, a group of Muslims. And then they went in, and they saw him, and he told them the story. And one of them offered to give him something to cover his body. And he was such a zahid, even then he said, I won't accept it from anybody who has relationship to the Sultan, and anybody who has power, anybody. In other words, I want what will cover my body, I want it to be completely without shubha. And then a young boy said, I have 2 pieces of cloth that my mother made for me. I'll give you that as a kafan. And he gave him and that's what he was buried in. And eventually he was bathed and washed and was on the way, and I think Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu is the one who performed his janazah. So this is Abu Dharr al-Ghifari radiallahu anhu. So Imam al-Nawawi narrated from the authority of Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, Jundub ibn Junada. You can say Jundub or Jundib or Jundab. All of these are possible in the pronunciation. So Jundub ibn Junada. Wa Abi Abdurrahman Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu. So Imam al-Nawawi narrated from Abu Dharr and from Mu'adh ibn Jabal the same hadith. Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu ta'ala anhu arda, also a great companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Mu'adh ibn Jabal accepted Islam when he was 18 years old. And he fought the Battle of Badr with the Prophet ﷺ and several other battles with the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ described Mu'adh ibn Jabal. He said, أَعْلَمَ النَّاسِ بِالْحَلَالِ وَالْحَرَامِ Mu'adh ibn Jabal. The person with the most knowledge of the companions of halal and haram, meaning of sharia and fiqh, is Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiyallahu ta'ala anhu arda. This is why the Prophet ﷺ sent him to Yemen to teach the people of Yemen and to be a qadi amongst them. And the Prophet ﷺ approved of his judgment when he was going. And the Prophet ﷺ is a famous hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, what will you judge by? And he said, the book of Allah. And if you cannot find it, he said, the sunnah. And if you cannot find it, he said, with my ra'i, and my opinion based on the Quran and the sunnah. And the Prophet ﷺ hit his chest and said that, Alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah, who caused the messenger of Allah to say that which is in conformity with the messenger of Allah. So the Prophet ﷺ not only trusted his knowledge in Sharia to know what is the Quran and the Sunnah, yani the judgment of the Quran and the Sunnah on matters, but trusted him enough to know that he can make analogy and inference to the Quran and the Sunnah when needed, which is the job of the mujtahids. So the Prophet ﷺ approved of Mu'adh ibn Jabal being among the mujtahids of the companions radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wa arda. And he remained one of the great fuqaha. And the Sahaba recognized him and his supremacy in fiqh. When Abu Muslim al-Khawlani radiyallahu anhu said, I went to a place, to a masjid, in which there is an old companion of the Prophet ﷺ. Older, meaning somebody upper in age. And there is a young one. So there's an old companion and there's a young companion in the gathering. And the people would speak about matters of religion. And whenever they differ, they would refer the matter to the young one, not the old one. So I asked the people, who is this? And they said, that is Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu. Meaning even the older companions would defer to him in matters of ikhtilaf, because the Prophet ﷺ said about him that he is أعلم الناس بالحلال والحرام. He is the most knowledgeable of people as it relates to halal and haram. The Prophet ﷺ professed, he's one of the companions that the Prophet ﷺ professed love for. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, to Mu'adh ibn Jabal, إِنِّي لَأُحِبُّكَ يَا مُعَاذ. Yani, O Mu'adh, I love you. And Mu'adh said, and I love you by Allah. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, so then do not ever neglect to say after every prayer, Allahumma a'inni ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husna ibadati. In other words, the people who I love and the people who love me would not neglect to say after every prayer, Allahumma a'inni ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husn ibadati. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu wa arda once said that kana Mu'adh ummatan qanitan lillahi wa lam yakun min al-mushrikeen. This is an allusion to an ayah of the Quran that describes Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam in that way. So Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, كان معاذ أمة قانتا لله ولم يكن من المشركين. Somebody in the gathering said, you mean Ibrahim, because they know the ayah. And then Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, did you hear me say Ibrahim? And he said, no. And then Abdullah ibn Mas'ud repeated. He said, كان معاذ أمة قانتا لله ولم يكن من المشركين. And then Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, I am comparing between Mu'adh and Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. And then the person said, how? Or Abdullah ibn Mas'ud sensed that the people were shocked with that comparison. And then Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, an ummah, somebody described as an ummah, is somebody wherever he goes, he directs the people to khayr. He directs people to that which is good. So he's described as an ummah. In other words, it's a builder of an ummah. The teacher of people who always directs them to that which is good. Builds an ummah. The teachers build ummah. So he said, Mu'adh is an ummah because everywhere he goes, he establishes that which is good. And he removes that which is bad. And a qanit, somebody who's described as having qunut, is somebody who is, their obedience to Allah is never compromised. So these two qualities exist in Mu'adh radiallahu anhu. Wherever he goes, he establishes khayr and he removes shar. And he's always in obedience to Allah. So because of that, I am saying, كان معاذ أمة قانتا لله ولم يكن من المشركين. So Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala narrated from Mu'adh ibn Jabal and from Abu Dharr al-Ghifari radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, اتق الله حيثما كنت. Have the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wherever you are. It's narrated from Mu'adh, it's narrated from Abu Dharr. Therefore, the possibilities is that it was said to Mu'adh and Abu Dharr heard it. Or it was said to Abu Dharr and Mu'adh heard it. Or it was said to somebody else and both of them heard it and narrated it. According to majority of the muhaddithun, the recipient of the statement was Abu Dharr al-Ghifari. So Mu'adh heard that the Prophet ﷺ said to Abu Dharr al-Ghifari radiyallahu anhu, and Abu Dharr narrated himself that the Prophet ﷺ said, meaning to me, ittaqillaha haythuma kunt. Have taqwa wherever you are. And again, the reason for this is because Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, the Prophet ﷺ wanted him to go back to his tribe. And he wanted to stay in Mecca. But staying in Mecca was difficult for him because of distance from his family, and because of finding work, and because of finding a place to stay. All of these were difficulties for Abu Dharr. But Abu Dharr just wanted to be in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ, and he didn't want to leave. Even when the Prophet ﷺ was saying, go back to your people, that there might be some good in that, he wanted to stay in Mecca, to be with the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ said, ittaqillah haythuma kun. In other words, you can have taqwa wherever you are. You don't need to be in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ, or you don't need to be in Mecca al-Mukarramah to have taqwa. Ittaqillah haythuma kun. You can have taqwa, or he's commanding him, have taqwa wherever you are. Have taqwa wherever you are. And haythu can be used metaphorically in the Arabic language or physically, and it can refer to place or it can refer to time. So we can interpret the hadith both ways. We can interpret it physically or metaphorically, and we can interpret it with reference to place and to time. So when he says ittaqillaha haythuma kunt, metaphorically, have taqwa wherever you are, metaphorically meaning your headspace. No matter your psychological state, if you're distressed or you're happy, if you're depressed, sad, or you are pleased, if you're whatever you're in modern language, and wherever your head's at, have taqwa. Being stressed is not an excuse not to have taqwa. Being depressed is not an excuse not to have taqwa. Being sad is not an excuse not to have taqwa. So, haythu, metaphorically, headspace. Physically, wherever you are. If people can see you or they can't see you. If you're in Mecca or you're in America. If you're on the land or you're on the sea. Ittaqillah. Taqwa is not restricted to time and place. And time, wherever, whenever you are. In Ramadan, out of Ramadan. Nights or days, it doesn't matter. During your holidays that are determined by wherever you are, and if you're in school, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Nobody can say, oh, we're on holidays so we can show our awrah and we can eat anything. No, ittaqillah. Have taqwa, it doesn't matter. Ittaqillaha haythuma kunt. What is taqwa? Maybe we'll have to stop here and continue. We'll have to stop here and continue in the next session, inshallah. هذا وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين.